put link, get into
Okay.
the conference call. And they do this with I think WebEx. Is WebEx.
That's fine, because we have apps when notice the new emails from all of our different email accounts.
Okay. What I'll do is that I'll send you about this event, including a document about attend and the list of participation I will set up and also send it to you so that you can double check. Yeah, and
Okay.
the list of the participants I will then distribute to the ECB. Yeah. So if you want to have a look at ECB, then yeah, just go into the internet and then you find all relevant information what these guys are doing to control our European financial organization. So hopefully it makes sense to get a bit more insight. And of course, there's also the possibility to ask and have a discussion with these people. Yeah, good. I hope soon I will also have a guy from the startup scene to bring into a session. I had a very interesting event last week, which was, of course, online. And there is an organization in Germany and a few other countries. They give an environment where you present your ideas for a startup, or you already have what we were talking about. You have an idea and you have had your first experience with, or your project is already running. The speciality of this organization is that they support only startups which have a social or development impact. So, for an example, and the startups come out of universities. So, one startup had the idea in I think it was in Togo. The problem there is, and that is how to generate actually ideas. The problem they have is that when all the farmers bring in their harvest, then because they don't have any houses, locations where they can store the fruits or other harvests, so they have to bring all the goods from the field directly to the market.
Wow, that
means they come with a load of products onto the market. So, of course, because when you go to the market and you have to offer everything, the guys from warehouses, they buy the products for a cheap price because there's no real competition.
Yes.
So what they did, they they did a certain, or they constructed a little house, let's say a house with the solar plate, where these farmers are then able to store their harvest, so that they are not forced to bring the goods directly to the market. So they can wait a few days or a week or something like this. Yeah? So it has an impact on the social impact for people and markets. So these projects they're presented, and then getting an award and will be supported. So there were a presentation of about 5 such kind of ideas with the social impact. So very interesting, and this company or this organization is made to support these kind of special startups. So sometimes these startups will go out of the university and will then professionally supported by probably business angels or others. I think it's called Enaxus. Yeah, let me just check what I have. It's quite interesting, and you will find it probably also in other environments or areas. Probably it's also in China. So the organization is called Enaxus. The problem, if you go on the website, everything is a German. but you can have a look. It's where is the chat? Okay, good. Do you have an idea? No? Okay, good. Then let's start. Any questions up to now? Any questions about the lectures? question about books you read or chapters? Xiao, everything fine? Hello? Xiao? Xiao, are you offline?
I'm afraid so.
Here we are.
She's back.
Xiao, can you hear me?
Yes, I just turned on the light.
Yeah. I see the point. No lines. No lines, Xiao. No. Stay here. Okay. What do you have in the back? Travel all the way. Have you been in Pisa? Paris?
Definitely not.
Yeah, I think that is the plan. Xiao, do you have any questions up to now? To the lessons about ready? Everything, anything we should repeat?
Saying is clear.
That means I can ask you a question and you can answer. Not really. Okay. We will have a kind of an assessment, which I probably will give you either by mail or next week, which means you have to do a homework, which is a bit more intense than only to discuss some issues, etc. It is a bit of more work. So that means you will have to have a bit to work on a certain issue or theme. Yeah. Of course, in a small group, so you can organize yourself. Yeah. Okay. So then let's go. So many windows. Okay. The last lessons we talked about financial planning, right? And when we talked about financial planning, it was partly a piece of square of content, which is, let me go to the other view, which was part, I think, covered also by the financial management lesson. So there is a lot of overlapping. So that was a strategic financial planning, the capital resources, the liabilities of capital, and the mezzanine. And we remember that we talked about this strategic, which is not short term. We talked about what kind of capital are we here and there talking about. Talked about that. We will see this furthermore. Differences between debt, equity, or economical capital. And when we talk about financial, we have, of course, other factors which are very important to our company, which is the human and the social capital. This will be, or is always, as you have seen, important for more or less every business plan. We have seen, I call it the root of a strategical planning path, which is the planning of objectives, potentials, the budgetings, the management and assessment risk. You have to assess your risk continuously in every stage of your plan and of your business, because this here is one of the key elements, and sometimes the consequences are underestimated. People think, I do a nice plan with the resources, the objectives, where I want to go to, I have the financials, and I have super budgeting, profit and loss, and everything looks fine, the liquidity, super. And at the end of the game, I establish my plans in a way that I establish a best practice, so I'm competitive to the market. I have my rules. It's a nice process I implemented, but then I have to see how all these components are actually working together and with what kind of risk in everything what I do. And that always reflects, of course, also the business plan. And you have content constantly, and that is very, very important, especially when you start up and create a new business. That you assess your risk, your decisions, of course, your financial exposure, but the risk. What is the value of your risk? Because risk, mostly, you have to count risk. You have to value risk. That means if I do this or make this decision, what is the negative or positive outcome in a way of money, of resources, etc. Yeah, this just to give you an idea that this is often underestimated of a plan of any growing business. If you are a professional and you have established investment, this is of course professionals very important piece. They monitor it heavily, and we come to the ECB, European Central Bank, or also other institution controlling an industry, and they often create the instruments and restriction to industries how to measure risk. So the Financial Control Organization in Germany, it's called BaFin. In the UK is called FAS, Financial Advisory Service. So they tell the banks and others how to evaluate risk, what instruments, which formulas they use and have to use. And that is always renewed. And it's a lot of work in the back, a lot of money they have to invest to organize them accordingly. For the corporates, there are not that many routes. I'm always astonished where mostly only financial institutions are in focus. Okay. So we have seen the not very good quality, but I will of course send you this, the distribution of work. And we see the vice president, which is the chief financial officer, who actually is all these tasks we are talking when you finance sourcing. Yeah. What does the executive vice president operations do? Often they call him COO. Ladies? Yes. I will just read it for you. The Chief Operating Officer, COO, is a senior executive with overseeing the day-to-day administrative and operational function of a business. And that covers, for example, the buildings. It covers the IT, the whole stuff with hardware, software, equipment, and environment. So it is very much, as you said, the operational of a company or a bank. He's really also wants to take out the buildings. They are always up to date, take care about the information systems and all of this. Yeah. Then we have the executive vice president. Mostly, they call him, sometimes there is a CMO, like marketing manager, or it's a CSO, customer sales manager, or customer care manager. And over time, there are other C-level generated. So, for example, with all the new tendencies to environmental issues and investments into environmental and social investments, you often find, meanwhile, CEOs with C-level taking care about this kind of production, environment, projects, etc. So there are quite a lot of, depending on organization, different C-levels, meanwhile established for other areas of the company. But they only looked at these three because these are the most important C-level jobs to actually influence, in the first row, influence our whole planning process for the company, which is important for us from the financial side. Good. We talked about resources, liquidity, liability, and quality. Mezzanine, which is in the middle, financing companies in the middle between ordinary debt and real equity. This is mostly a part-time financial part of a transaction, etc. Companies need for special purposes. And then they pay it, mostly they pay it back. And then a normal debt goes in instead of it, or equity. And that is quite expensive because it is more or less connected with high interest. Yeah. Here you have the definition. That means here you see sometimes it is up to 20 to 30% interest you have to pay because it is a quite risky investment. In a way, mostly because it is a debt. It's not any equity, means it's not part, becomes part of the business, because if you finance in mezzanine, you don't get a part of your business. You don't get any stocks, etc. It's more or less only financial debt with a high interest. You don't get it you don't get it as a startup. You don't get it in the early stages of your startup. Mostly you get this mezzanine when you're an established company. Yeah, so it only matters when you are more or less here. So here you can talk about mezzanine to people. Yeah, here. Yeah, when you are going up the way we were talking about, and here you start more or less to become mature with your startup. And that these are the areas where you talk also here and there about mezzanine, and the most is here. Here you think about mergers and acquisition, to buy other companies, to move into other countries. You need a certain amount of money you can't get out of your cash flow. You don't want to give out any equity, means any shares out, and then you ask for this mezzanine, and then you get to back as possible. Yeah. Good. Always come back to the stream or the life cycle of who is actually supporting, giving you money. Because I show this graphs in different point of views, and if you compare other slides, and other graphs with this or others, you will see that there are always different names and different meanings, but more or less showing the same stage of a business. So you have a lot of, here, for example, you see in the environment where the first angels come in, or the venture capital funds come in, then sometimes they work with convertible loans. Does anybody knows what a convertible loan is? What is a convertible loan? What is a loan? What is a loan? The you from bank, or also from the organization, that bank, right? That is a loan.
Yes.
And is that convertible? Convertible doesn't mean a convertible car, you know, where you just do a convertible out of a normal car. Convertible is you can convert it from a loan. You can convert it into equity. So you say, okay, I lend you $1 million US, and I have the right in a contract to actually convert this loan into equity. So becoming not only a borrower, and can change to an investor having stocks of your company. Yeah. So become from the position you become from the borrower to a partly owner of the company. So you get stocks. Yeah. Instead of the loan you get stocks. Huh? Good. There is a nice say about when we talk about, we have seen about bootstrapping, yeah, to use your own capital, etc. There is something like bootstrapping means triple F. Sometimes it named triple F. What could this mean? Any idea? When you look to bootstrapping, what are the specialities on bootstrapping, etc.? You get money from your family, etc. Means people around you give money for your first idea, for the first activities. Yeah. So some people tell it triple F. That means family, friends, and fools. Yeah, fools, because it is a bit crazy, of course, to give somebody money who doesn't really have a clue what the outcome is. So triple F is family, friends, and fools. So it's probably good to connect this with bootstrapping, or sometimes also with crowd. Okay, is there any question about this? Any question to the meaning of some wordings, etc.? You see here the providers and here the type of finance. Okay. Here, family and friends and fools. They go mostly into equity. That means the personal family friends, the investors, the capital, ventures capitals, etc. They go mostly in equity, what we have learned before. You have classic, there are also guys. What is asset lending? Called ABS. Asset lending, for example, if you have, if you want to have get money from a bank and have an asset, a house, a mean, ground, and that means you have an asset, and lending the loan is secured or is secured by an asset. Yeah. And the asset, when it could be also a deposit of securities, yeah, then sometimes you call it collateral. Yeah. Okay. Here, that is an early stager. You do your rapid development. Yeah, just that you hear this wording. That is the phase where you are in your garage, like Bill Gates or Zuckerberg, and do your developments, and then create the startup where your first business angel or crowdfunding is starting. And here you have some average amounts of money which are involved within. Then you have this early growth. This is also a typical business angel issue. Yeah? And you have your rapid growth, and mostly in the rapid growth, you have here the venture guys, strategic investors and the venture guys. Yeah. And you see the debt, the classic debt and loans, they come at at a later stage when you have the early growth, rapid growth. And the banks, they come more or less when your risk level is down and you start rapidly growing. You are more or less on the way to become an established business. Yeah? So here you see the connection between the stages becoming a solid company with a solid product, the risk, of course, high risk in the beginning, low risk at the end, and some wordings in investors' wordings, and average amounts. Of course, that could be also 2 million or 3 million. It could be 500,000 you invest by yourself, family for food or money. Okay. You find also different words for the same purpose. Yeah. Again, in the church, this you will see always. Did somebody have read or partly read or bought this little book, Crossing the Chasm, from Geoffrey Moore? No?
Read some pages, not much.
Some
I read
yeah, you
read
did?
read some pages, and to be honest, I didn't finish this.
Okay. So he read several books, and he always used this logic, and he also wrote a book about investing stuff, and then always used the same logic. And here you see also the different wordings. Yeah. Okay, so that is a summary of things. So then we went into startups. We talked about also about some wordings. And then we see also again a new wording here and there. Oops. A new wording here and there. Some people, some organizations talk about seed capital. What is seed capital? Or where do you position seed capital if you see this curve? Oh. So if you see this curve, you have here the guy with the idea and doing the right things. So often here you have...
Before the product come out.
Please?
Before the product come out.
Yes, it is mostly right after your idea working in the garage. It's a kind of a bit like crowdfunding. And then they talk about at a later stage, often talk about seed and seed A, or seed A, seed series. And you have an investor here, invest here at a later stage, let's say here. This is not really seed. Here, then they do a contract with you, and in the contract, they is mostly fixed that they give you CA, and then they have the right to go into a seed or CA phase, where they have the right to invest more money into the company. When they see that your company's development quite positive, and they controlled, of course, your figures, they control everything, and then they have a contract and say, okay, I go with the second wave of money into your company. So that is sometimes seed or seed A. So let me go here. Where's this? I see. Okay, good. Where is my... Okay. Good. So just to give you more insight into these wordings, and that you have an idea, expansion the right in a contract and say, I want to expand my investment because your numbers, everything is fine. The market efforts generate new products. It is in a later stage where the angels are, or even later on. Bridge, we have also talked about this. So just that you see the different wording, sometimes it's confusing. And when you see and read about, you have always to look at the wording, and then you can have a look at what does it really mean. Then we talked about bootstrapping. That is the point. Triple F, friends, family, fools, go with you. Business plan. We talked about the business plan. Crucial. One of the most important pieces for any phase of your startups and further developments. We have learned this is the key to present your company beside the product, to present your company and present your capabilities, managerial capabilities, to have the 360 grade view on the market and everything which influence your development. We did this. Here you can read it again. Here we have a short overview, very short. You see this in this book from Gibbons, Hirsch and Da Silva. Of course, more structured, more intense. Appendixes, of course, with all the different products, product types, market research data, and here you see some specials, and you tell about machineries, etc., which are not bought, which are not heavily has to be financed, which are not taking away a lot of equity. So what kind of stuff do you have leased? It's important because it's a monthly. You probably know if you have a car, you don't want to buy the car, you lease the car. And that is important for everybody in the market. What kind of volume and money do you have to pay regularly to lease any product? Again, this is always part of the game. Crowdfunding, crowd investment. We talked about crowd investment already. Let me just repeat some pieces of it. We talked about the seed capital, and this seed capital in the beginning of a startup is more or less compared with the crowdfunding environment. And the startup capital is kind of equivalent to this, and sometimes describing more than seed capital, because it is, let's say it is the same. Seed capital probably a bit later, but it doesn't really matter. Crowdfunding. What you use more or less is regarding to crowdfunding, you use a platform. We talked about this earlier. You use the platform. It's mostly a standard software platform to go into the market, present your product, and then hopefully get the money. And I just talked to an organization. I don't know whether I told you, and these guys, they offer this software, offer it also as a white label software. That means you can put your logos and everything, specialties into the software, and then with this software you are going for crowdfundings and collect the money. What they also do, which is very, very important as a service, they service you also regarding give you control or consult about, you could do this kind of marketing, you could design your product in a different way, etc. So they do more than just giving the platform. And meanwhile, of course, these platforms are all web-based. They cost not that much money, but it is probably interesting that I get this lady from marketing to a presentation of one of the platforms, yeah, so that you see how this actually works. And part of these platforms is that we were talking about. Product description, part of the business plan, to explain part of your research results, etc., for the description of your product. And that means product, business plan, and market view. Good. You need always to address a large number of investors. And the volumes you normally look for is between 10 and 200,000 or 300,000 euro. That is more or less the average. 300,000 is quite a lot to get this money in a crowdfunding environment. Yeah. Here, an example, an idea of an app-supported smartwatch connection to an iPhone or Android. And he was actually asking for 100,000. Within 24 hours, he raised 1 million. So people was very much attracted by this idea. So he got more money than actually asked for. Often in this application, you ask for 300, and when 300 are actually in, then they stop the crowdfunding period, and then they open up probably another one, and that is what happened. They saw, okay, we have more and more input or asking for. By the end of the funding period, the project has raised over 10 million. And 69 people actually gave money into that. 15 watches per week. And with backers who contributed $99 for more, getting the first order filled first. So they got also a product from this investment. And I think we already gave this different definition about equity-based. That is more or less entrepreneurs in an early stage mostly don't want this. Because you give away parts of your company at a quite low price. Mostly you want to develop the company as much as possible, only with external money, but not only finance, but not always connected with equity. That is something with a business angel, or sometimes only with a venture capital. Yeah. That means more or less the lending-based crowdfunding is the key. Please give me money with high risk, I pay back, but you don't get equity. But all more or less strong and established companies, venture capitals, etc., they always ask for equity. of course. That is the game where you make money with. Yeah, that is what we just described. Yeah. You get a prize. You want to see a video about venture capital in China? A short video.
I'm curious what it is. I'm quite curious what it is.
It's more or less the same logic, what you have. It's just a different source. Yeah, but it is the same logic everywhere on this world. We cannot get this. Always the same. I think that the market, meanwhile, in China is more in different areas more developed as in our market environments.
Actually, the things we talked 1 minute earlier, there's 3 different kind of core investor that happens in we call it Double 11, which is a Black Friday. We can I see all kinds of these invest.
I mean, the US way, the systems are more or less the same. Yeah, there is no real difference. The goals are more or less the same. Actually, to bring new products into the market and to generate, of course, value. What in China is more developed than in Germany or US is the public funding. Because this is also part of our piece, is that the companies of the countries, of course, want to support, want to be supported, or otherwise the countries and the governments, they want to support, of course, more and more startups. Because if you are a startup and you have an idea, but this idea is not relevant to the market, or it has a very high social impact, etc., you don't find probably a venture capital organization. And this is where banks, governmental banks, etc., taking a very important role. In Germany, it is the KfW, which is often involved in startups. And they also do investments in other countries or give it money to other countries. And then you have a lot of local banks and funds who actually take money, put money into the startups. The funds are often coming from the government. It's a very important piece because they don't want to leave every investment to venture capital. Of course, they have often not the right view. Oh, just a second, please.
Yes.
Hallo? Also kommen Sie bitte zurück zum Tor. Zum Tor zurück. Gehen Sie bitte zurück zum Tor und da rechts ist eine Terrasse. Da stehe ich. Ja. Ah, super. Guten Tag. Das ist es. Dankeschön. Danke. Ciao.
老师开始收快递了。
So. Amazon.
Ein Paket kommt.
Das check. Let's see. Where is it? Na, super.
By the way, what did you buy?
Hmm?
I mean, what did you buy? The package.
It is. Let me see whether it's the right one. We bought.
Ah. Eine Lampe.
For a lamp.
Mhm.
That's it. So, doesn't work. I don't know why. It's always the same. If you have a first look, it works. Strange. I'll give him another try. Looks, yeah, here we are. So it tells a bit what venture capital we know. This venture in China, operational framework, types, difficulties, and final remarks. What is it? Independent professional manager dedicated pool capital that focus on equity or equity-linked investments, privately held, high-growth companies. So here's everything what we talked about. And here you see venture capital is equity. Yeah, they don't like this. Or, and that means equity linked, is, for example, the convertible bonds. Yeah, where you have a loan which can be switched into equity. High risk, but angels, etc., and crowd is even more risky than a venture capital. In China, you go, mostly you go for cars. Is relatively recent in China due to recent adoption of market economy, of the development. The government plays a large role, logically, in the regulations, but in every country, you have involved because of setting what we talked about, the project, environment project, etc. Often the state is the shareholder, investor, fund manager, and auditors. The difference to other organizations, other countries, is that in Germany, meanwhile, the state also becomes a shareholder. It was not the case before. Before, it was only financing, having no risk, and leave the equity part of this investment to other investors. Meanwhile, they learned that it is here and there interesting to be also a shareholder, even partly sometimes for a short period. In China, 3.5 billion US dollar in 2013, 7.2% of global venture capital activities. I didn't find any new figures, but it should grow, of course. Does somebody knows the China Venture Capital Association?
Not quite sure, because as far as I know, the speculated capital are not so welcome in China.
So I think that is a typical venture capital services they give.
I mean, the speculative capital, it can be, right?
Please.
I type it in the chat.
So here, this is important that because of the economical input and the capabilities, and of course of the reserves in dollars and euros of the Chinese central bank, more and more they go into the venture capital area. This is more or less as a typical setup. Yeah. You have a finance environment where you need new capital. You have an investor who gives the capital. And you have the equity environment. And the investor has certain capabilities. He can go as a financer, like a bank, in a way, into the company, or investors also finance venture capitalists. So a venture company, they also use bank loans beside private investments. So here often you have a fund dedicated to investments in equity in companies. And this fund is provided then with money from you, ISIN, or Liang, CIO, whoever, and banks put money here, or other institutions like insurance companies. Of course, when you have investment from banks, asset manager, insurance companies, the investments of venture capital, they have to be connected with less risk than probably in other companies, but is equity based. Yeah. This is clear. You have an operation, you mobilize money, etc., and typically of a venture capital company is that you only stay a relatively short period as the equity owner in a company. Sometimes it's 2 years, sometimes 3. There are some investors, I talked to one, they stay 6, 7 years. If it's necessary, the company is development great. They finance all the expansion of a company. And he told me that the company is just now preparing to go to the US with their products, and that all of this finance is done also by them. So they didn't sell the equity at an early stage. They keep it now for 6, 7 years right now. They will probably stay in the company, but the average venture capital, they use, or they need to, or they want to do an exit. That means they bring their equity to an exchange. You see that very often that new companies go to exchange, and that is where they make their money. So to go to an exchange, to go for an exit, what they say, for this investment is most driven by the capital. It tells the management of the company, I want to make other investors do money, I want to realize my equity, it now tripled or whatever, I bring the exchange. That is everywhere the same. Of course. Do you know some companies?
I mean, all these companies we are quite similar with them.
Are these companies who were financed by venture capital?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Of course. Of course, you always have and will have independent or foreign venture capital companies. Very logical. If you expand your business as in China, etc., you have these guys always and everywhere. Yep, also. This is what always is a point when you come out of a certain development which is not finalized yet. Of course, your organizations, I remember very well in Germany when the institutions were not that developed. Yeah. So they were kind of overwhelmed by all the requirements. When you can imagine you have venture capital people, etc., and they're fast, they want to have fast decision. And then you go to a governmental organization, and they say, first of all, I have a coffee break and we can talk later on. And this is the normal stuff. Yeah, different mentalities, etc. And here also you have stuff with property rights, of course. So these are all well-known environmental accounting, very important. That was an issue, of course, which is also important for startups and organization going into the venture capital environment, that you have not only to be active with your local accounting rules, you have to adapt also to the international, like IFRS, international accounting rules. That is not always easy. It's always privatization always case. You have a country like China, also Russia, etc. They all always have a still with privatization. It's I think it's changed very fast, especially in China. Concluding, very strong growth, of course. And these are sources.
Whose motors?
Are there also Chinese wordings? No, I don't see any Chinese. Chinese University, Hong Kong, whatever. Okay, just to give you a certain view, I saw this in the internet and I said, yes, that is something for my guys to have a look at.
Okay. I just noticed that the Chinese map is.
Please.
I just noticed that that the Chinese map got something wrong because it's a little different with our kind of map.
Yeah.
Some of the map is missing. Some of the place is missing.
Okay. I would say we do a break. What we will see is in the next, I will give you an overview also with documents, because this is something, and we talked about seed A, etc. How is probably a contract between an entrepreneur and investor structured? Because all this theory is very, at the end of the game, at a certain stage, there must be a contract in place. And here's keywords, and also will open contracts, a real contract, not real numbers, but the standard contract. We can talk about this, where investors and entrepreneurs rule their project, and they were kind of working together. Okay, so I would say we have now 27. Let's say 20, 30, 20 minutes. So 10 to, in my time it's 10 to 12. And your time is 10 to, we have 6 hours or 7?
7.
7. So here it's 10 to 12, and there it's 2, 3, 4, 6, 10 to 7, right? You come together.
Gosh.
Let's say in 22 minutes. Okay?
Okay.
Good. See you.